the basis of which you are approving this budget. To finance the budget, Uganda Revenue Authority has now been given a 34 trillion target next financial year. This year, this current year, the target was 29.3 trillion. The taxes will be corrected as follows. If the tables were there, then I will be summarizing and I don't have to read everything. So these tables are too long. If I read them, we'll sleep here.
Let's have it uploaded.
So what do I...
Can we have the report uploaded?
No, No, the information is here, Honorable Siagi, you know it. My work was to bring it here. So what do I do, Madam Speaker? Because these tables are important.
Let's have them uploaded.
Yeah.
Let's have the report uploaded. Can I have a look at your report? Let me see.
Madam Speaker, as you have guided, I will continue reading, but when eventually the tables are presented, you'll allow me to go back and explain, because the reason I put tables is not to read too much. I was on page 4. I'll come back to that when it is uploaded. I hope it is not deliberate. I want to go to page 6. It begins with a table. Madam Speaker and honorable members, I was explaining on page 3 coming to 6 the inability of URA to hit targets for the last 5 years. I now go to budget performance on page 6. The last 2 financial years should guide us when considering a budget with exaggerated figures. In 2020 to 2023, this Parliament approved a total budget of 52.548 trillion. The actual money raised through taxes and borrowing was 43.4 trillion. Minister of Finance issued or warranted 49.226 trillion. In 2023-2024, revised approved budget was 61.669 trillion. 50.172 trillion was warranted, but the actual money corrected and borrowed was 48 trillion. On average, we have been raising just about 50 trillion to fund our budgets. This election year could even be worse. We need to approve a realistic budget of not more than 55 trillion at worst. The reason government presents an obscene figure is because they want to raise their amount 3% that they are authorized by the law to spend without prior parliamentary approval, which they will give to Pineti and Amina and others, and then come here for approval after. I now want to go to page 7, which is the allocation of the budget. Honorable Speaker and other members, we hope you have already noted that we continue borrowing to pay loans. Next financial year, total borrowing is projected to be 32 trillion, of which 10 trillion is to clear maturing treasury bills and bonds. It is actually now 11, which finance likes to sanitize and call debt rollover. So the NRM government goes to a money lender and asks him to lend it to pay an old debt. We must bring this nonsense to an end. Next financial year, you have budgeted 11 trillion to pay interest on money borrowed, and only 6.5 trillion for development. This is crazy, honorable ladies and gentlemen, that your budget, the biggest portion is to pay interest and not development. The table, which I am not able to display, is giving you the summary of the budget. 38% of the budget is debt servicing, 11% is wage, non-wage is 41.1%, and government is just 9.1%. I now move to servicing public debt, which I have told you it will take 38% of our budget. And that's why we need to pay a lot of attention to this. 38% of our budget is debt servicing. In a report on public debt and grants read in Parliament on March 27th, total public debt is given on page 12 as 106.22 trillion as at December 2024. This, in our calculation, is 52.4% of the GDP, which is given as 202.7 trillion on page 3 of the budget framework paper. The government committed not to borrow beyond 52.4% of our GDP in the Charter of Fiscal Responsibility. Approving this budget means you are allowing government to go against the Charter of Fiscal Responsibility, which will offend Section 12(6) of the Public Finance Management Act. The section states the annual budget shall be consistent with the National Development Plan, the Charter for Fiscal Responsibility, and the Budget Framework Paper. On page 9 of the report on loans, Minister of Finance observes there is a moderate risk of debt distress, mainly due to slow export growth and rising debt service burden, which amounted to 31.5% of revenue as of June 2024 and projected to stay above 20% throughout the medium term, mainly due to the cost of debt. Uganda has limited room to absorb economic shocks, meaning a significant economic downturn or a shock event could worsen its risk of debt distress. This is what the Minister of Finance says. To try to clear this huge debt, government has allocated 27.3 trillion, as I said, which is 38% of the total budget. And this is captured in vote 130. Interestingly, while 27.3 trillion is being allocated for debt servicing, we are seeking to borrow another 32 to fund the budget. One step ahead, two steps behind. We should at worst be borrowing less than what we are paying. You cannot repay 27 and then borrow 34. It means you are not paying. The table again, and that's why, Madam Speaker, it was important for these tables to be available. Chinese loans. China has become the biggest beneficiary of our debt servicing. This financial year, as at December 2024, we had paid China US dollar 178.744 million, equivalent of 679.2 billion. Of this 679 billion that we are paying to China, 212 billion is interest and 13.2 billion is commission and other fees. Currently, Uganda owes China 9.2 trillion. Only the World Bank with 18.3 trillion has lent Uganda more money. Chinese loans are very expensive. Look at the interest they are collecting annually. This planning must discourage government from recklessly contracting Chinese and commercial bank loans. Again, there is a table to show you people who have lent Uganda money. I have said China is now number 2 at 9.2 trillion, and they are collecting almost $1 trillion from Uganda every year. So you come here to pass a budget, you think it is going to your constituency. It is actually going to China. Total domestic debt. The stock of domestic debt is given by Finance on page 23 of the report on loans and grants as 53.224 trillion as of December 2024. In the Treasury Operations Policy Statement, domestic debt is given as 51.7 trillion. This is mainly the money borrowed from commercial banks to finance our luxury lifestyle in the budget. Sometimes this government borrows money that is paid in 91 days. This is like ordinary people walking to a money lender. The South African banks are the biggest beneficiaries of this lending, especially Stanbic and Standard Chartered. These South African banks collect more than 9 trillion annually in interest from government. Please remember that out of the about 24 licensed commercial banks in Uganda, only 4 are owned by Ugandans. What government calls domestic borrowing is actually foreign external, because these domestic banks are foreign owned, and the list of these banks is given. So they tell you domestic borrowing, you walk to Stanbic and they take the interest to South Africa. I want you also, honorable members, to note, I am now on page 11. We have 27 trillion debt servicing. You need to know who are we paying. First, we are going to pay Congo, Democratic Republic of Congo, for stolen gold, 247 billion. So this is what is in the budget that we are going to clear our debt. So one of the beneficiaries is Democratic Republic of Congo, 247 billion for stolen gold. The 27.3 trillion includes 247 billion to Democratic Republic of Congo for raping Congolese women, looting its gold, diamond and timber, when General Tibuhaburwa ordered its invasion in 1998-99. The soldiers General Tibuhaburwa deployed were accused of rape, while senior commanders and other NRM